Good Tuesday evening. I'm Carrie. This is Student Loan Chit-Chat. All right. This is from the Dave Ramsey show. It's about 8 years ago, but relevant today. Wife has spending addiction. Now, I have probably an idea as to what it's about, so I'm going to try to keep it all together. I'm going to give you some insight from someone who is a former shopaholic in my 20s. Pretty bad, too. All right, here we go. We're going to give it a shot. Playing it casual this evening, so hope that's all right.
Tom is with us in Indianapolis. Hey, Tom, welcome to the Dave Ramsey Show.
Thank you, Tom. Pleasure to be here.
Good.
Thanks for my call.
Certainly. How can I help, sir?
Basically, I'm married. Been married for 6 years, and I'm concerned that my wife may have some kind of a spending addiction. And I'm really looking for. I know absolutely nothing about addiction, or very little. So I wanted.
And I want to say something about spending addictions. Even though we know they exist, there are not the myriad of programs to help people with it, like, let's say, for drug and alcohol counseling or gambleaholics. I mean, we know programs exist, but, you know, unlike, let's say, work programs where there's drug and alcohol treatment programs and they, advertise it, there's really not advertising for people with spending addiction.
To see if there was any type of advice you could give a spouse of someone potentially dealing with a spending addiction, and if you knew of any good books or authors that I could read to really educate myself and become help me properly support my wife.
This guy's a keeper.
And yet not enable.
Okay.
Yeah, so he wants to make sure that the actions he's doing are actions that are effective in helping her in her recovery, not actions that are just going to make her addiction worse. And there's a lot for me to talk about on this, and I'm sure, positive, I won't get through all of it tonight, but I could write a book about it.
It's probably a different track than I would take if you called, and I mean, I probably wouldn't follow that path, and you wouldn't either if you said she had a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction.
What did I just say? Batting is at 1-0. Exactly. There's something about a spending addiction that is more secretive. Okay, it's just more secretive, and it almost kind of makes me think of people who's, let's say, have an eating addiction. The problem is you have to eat to survive. You have to spend some amount of money just for survival, the basic needs. But alcohol, you don't need to have at all. Other drugs, putting aside, the medicinal, okay? Drugs in general, recreational drugs, you don't need to have those at all. But you have to eat and you have to have spending, and both of them must be in control.
When you push something past misuse into the addiction definition, then you need to involve professional counselors immediately.
I agree. Unfortunately, one of the things that made it worse for me was, and this is in my early 20s, early to very late 20s, basically, let's just say all of my 20s. I had a job at one point, and I was discussing it with a counselor, but then I lost the insurance for that job, and when I lost the insurance, all hell broke loose. It takes a professional.
And so if that's truly what it is, if it's not just simple immaturity, run amok, and no boundaries, and no one's ever told her no, and she's just a princess, that's different than addiction, right? Addiction is, I'm out of control. About 2% of the public are obsessive-compulsive spenders.
And I will tell you, I was part of that 2%. Part of the spending addiction, and Ramsey is correct on this, it's OCD also. I had severe OCD. I don't really want to get into that this evening. But I had OCD on certain things that was so bad, it would wind me up in an emergency room. because I had such OCD behavior. I don't want to get into all that tonight, but I can tell you that the spending addiction, that's, like I've said before, that's just the surface. When Ramsey is talking about people who, and I'm going to, I'm going to try to stay mentally with you here, okay? Because it go kind of deep, and I don't want to go too deep. If I find it goes too deep, I may stop the video, okay? But when he talks about, you have to separate between who's just spending, like you said, because they're a princess, and who's spending because there's a problem. To me, one of the big dividing lines is there OCD behind it, obsessive compulsive disorder or behavior behind it. I kind of compare it to this. There are people who steal because there is something that's very, very wrong, medically wrong, mental health wrong. There are people who steal to survive. They're actually all totally mentally sane. They're stealing to survival steal. And then there are those who are just the thugs that go in with their friends into a Nordstrom's, grab a whole bunch of crap, run it out of the store to sell it on eBay. These are three very different categories. Compulsive spending, your shopaholics, are the exact same. There are different categories of it. It's not just one. And so in my case, it was combined with obsessive compulsive behavior. Extreme. And more than once I would wind up in the emergency room. It is what it is, right?
They've had a complete breakdown, and there is an addiction to it that is very, very real. It's not, everybody used to make fun. You remember a decade or two ago, Imelda Marcos with all their shoes, right? And that kind of stuff. And
for those who don't know, that was back in the 80s. Imelda Marcos was the former president, I believe, oh geez, I hope I'm right. I want to say the Philippines. And Ferdinand Marcos, yeah, I kind of do know a little history here, okay? And I believe it was the Philippines, okay? She wasn't the president, I'm sorry. Ferdinand Marcos, her husband, I believe was the president of the Philippines. This is in the 80s. Imelda Marcos was his princess, uppity up, wife who owned some ridiculous 500 shoes. Basically, they got ousted, went into exile, yada, yada. The people wound up hating them. Okay, that sort of behavior to me was just sheer greed. Just pure greed. That's who he's referring to. To me, it had nothing to do with OCD. No, it was just her president was head of the country and she was the wife. If I'm correct, okay, I think she was the wife of Ferdinand Marcos. Thank God they're both dead. God forgive me.
But and so are you seeing extreme patterns? Like she's coming home buying things she didn't even realize she bought?
In the video the other day about overspending. When you have a sincere overspending problem, when you are truly a shopaholic, I've explained this before, you will tend to go into, it's almost like you go into a trance. And sometimes if you ask them, what did you buy? They may not even remember. And they will purchase things that they didn't even want. They don't wear it. It may not even be the right size. It may not be something that feels comfortable on their skin. And it doesn't matter what the item is, from clothing to shoes to, a chair, whatever. It's almost, and this is really hard for people who are not shopaholics that have had mental health issues. It's like you go into this trance that you are simply doing an action. But the action you are doing is not sane. It's not all mentally there. And you do this action repetitively, almost like you could ring a bell to it, almost like an alcoholic. I wake up in the morning, I don't know. I'm not familiar with alcoholics. I'm just kind of going off what I know of. But from what I gather, alcoholics have patterns. They have certain routines. They have certain built-in excuses. They've done things, okay? There's a certain pattern. Well, Shopaholics, genuine shopaholics, have a pattern, okay? And that pattern is such that when you go shopping and you're in that state of mind, you really, really aren't shopping for the product, which is why a lot of shopaholics either don't keep the items that they purchased, or they can barely remember what they bought. And when I say they don't keep the items that they purchased, they may just give it away. It's invaluable to them, or they may return it. I can tell you that items really meant nothing to me, beyond just maybe the few minutes of having it. They just didn't mean that much to me, because it's not the item you want. And the fact that this husband is calling in saying, how do I help her? I'm going to jump right ahead and I'm going to say this. You can't. She, the wife, has to figure it out herself. This is not something that somebody else can do for you. As much as you would like someone's help, perhaps, as much as someone would like to help you, you know, you can't do it for them. The healing and the repair must come from the person that has the addiction, and they have to heal themselves from the inside out.
No, I wouldn't say she didn't realize it. They were purchases that were hidden from me that I don't find out about until later.
Right. And she's hiding them because part of it is she's ashamed, okay? She knows that perhaps it wasn't in the family budget. You have to understand, underneath all of this overspending, it doesn't mean that we weren't, let me just refer to myself, that's so much easier. It doesn't mean I wasn't aware that I had a budget. It doesn't mean that I wasn't aware that, you know, I had commitments and I had other things that I had to take care of. Okay, so part of her hiding, and I wasn't in a relationship, so I was not married at the time. So I didn't have to hide it from anyone per se, but yet in reality I did, because I wouldn't tell anybody in my family. And I remember somebody telling me once, they were like, they came over once, they were like, my God, Carrie, you have so much stuff. And I was like, oh yeah. It's like, why do you have so much stuff? And it wasn't just stuff, it was stuff in every color. You know, one sweater, 5 colors. Same design.
And then when I confront her about it, she feels bad. I mean...
You wonder how I know this. You wonder how I know this. See, I don't have to watch this video. I can tell you the story. I can tell you the story without watching the video. I could write a book. Yeah, I've been asked to before, but not now.
And it causes, you know, it destroys the snowball and whatnot.
Yeah, it destroys trust.
Of course it's going to destroy the snowball. What Dave's referring to, I think, is the debt snowball. You know, you save $1,000. Or what is it? I think I know what the snowball is. The snowball with Dave Ramsey, for those who might not know, is where you take it and you pay off the lowest credit card first, regardless of interest. And then once that's paid off, then you go to the next credit card, the second lowest balance, and you work your way up to the highest balance card. The goal is that regardless of the interest on the cards, you're trying to make it so that you feel rewarded with each card being paid off, even though it may mathematically not be the most economical way, because the smaller balance card may have a higher limit, yada yada. But that's what the debt snowball is. Start with the smallest card balance and just work your way up to the biggest card balance.
Us too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heaps shame on her and makes you mad.
Yeah, it does. It creates a lot of anger, but then she'll get better for a little bit. And
we always get better for a little bit. Always. When I was at that stage of my life, and I'm very blessed because for my recovery, it's been, oh, geez, about 20 years. 20 years. Because this type of addiction comes in and out. It's not like she's in that addiction state nonstop 24/7. No. She'll go in and out of the addiction state But when she's in it, it's really bad. An alcoholic's not necessarily an alcoholic 24/7. They may have times where they can sit in a board meeting and be totally sane, and then you see them afterwards and, you know, they're smashed. Well, it's the same thing with the shopaholic. Okay, someone with an extreme spending addiction. But I'm telling you, the spending addiction comes as a result of trauma. That has nothing to do with addiction. And this is why I say that the healing has to be from the inside out. Her husband can't save her. He can't. I can tell you that right now.
And then go back and do it again. And it's just a kind of a cycle of, of spending, I guess.
Exactly. Exactly. If I had been married at the time, that's what my husband would have said. He'd be like, okay, she goes to work. And this is the other thing, okay? There's functional alcoholics. There are functional shopaholics, okay? I was a highly functional shopaholic. I could hold a job most of the time. I, you know, for the most part, made sure my bills were paid as much as I could when I wasn't in a bankruptcy, okay? But I would be considered highly functional, but yet I had this huge problem in the background. But looking at me and stuff, you'd never know it. Yeah, I was educated, speak well, try to dress up. I'm a little tired tonight, so I'm not dressing up tonight. But, you know, I would be somebody that you'd look at and you'd think, nothing wrong.
The way I answer questions on this show, Tom, is what I would do if I were in your shoes, okay? Yeah. And I don't think I would try to read a book to fix this. And I don't.
No. No book is going to solve this problem. No friend can solve this problem. No parent, no sibling, no favorite child, no great spouse. Only one person can solve it. The person that has the addiction.
I don't think I'd visit a website to fix this. If I were in your shoes, I would seek out some professional marriage counseling.
I'm going to hear what he says before I disagree.
And I would start it there. And then in the first marriage counseling session, I would bring this up. So that counselor, who should be a trained professional, by the way, and I'm a person of faith, so I'm always going to look for a Christian marriage counselor.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. I know Dave gets a little into his Christian ranting, and, you know, I'm Christian myself, okay? I'm going to disagree. No. To me, it doesn't start. Marriage counseling is the side dish, okay? The main course, the meat and potatoes, has to be the person with the obsessive compulsive disorder alone in a room with a professionally trained psychiatrist. True story, I will tell you. I also disagree that it's a counselor, and this is from personal experience. I was advised to go to counseling. I was like, okay, Carrie, you know, I was told this. You need to go see a counselor. I sat in a counselor's office. The counselor looked at me and said, you don't need a counselor, you need a psychiatrist. And I was like, a psychiatrist? Well, those are for crazy people. Psychiatrists are for crazy people. That was my thought. And all she said was, quote, I can't help you. And that was the beginning of my walk into hell. Not because of what the counselor did. But the counselor did what the counselor had to do. But it was as I finally met with a psychiatrist, I was able to start piecing things. And I guarantee you, anybody who has had any sort of shopping addiction, and we're going to focus on shopping addiction, but it applies to other addictions. I guarantee you 110% it will get worse. You will burn, you will feel like you are burning in the flames of hell before you will pull yourself out of it. I guarantee it to you. And anybody who's ever had any sort of addiction knows what I'm talking about. And this is why it has to be between the person with the addiction and a very, very highly trained psychiatrist. This is above counselor. This is above having a counselor. This is not counsel. When you are this deep into it, a family counselor, marriage counselor, nah. No. And I will die on a cross. I will die on that field telling you that. No. This is a one-on-one walk between the person with the issue and a very trained psychiatrist. And the reason being is because the person with the issue, it's deeper. And you've heard me say this in the video the other day. It is deeper than just a discussion between you and your spouse. Whatever is at the root of the problem has to come out. And it has to come out in an environment that is absolutely trustworthy. And sometimes having a spouse there may not be right. And it will go beyond what the spouse even knows, because there may be trauma there, which I can 99.9% guarantee you there is, that even the spouse doesn't know about. It has to be one-on-one, and I will die on that field telling you that.
Or if it's me, because I want that worldview in the decision-making process that we use here. But different people will feel differently about that. But that's me, okay? So if you're going to do that, then you decide that. But here's the thing. If you're sitting in a marriage counseling session and you say, look, we've got a real trust breakdown, there's integrity breakdown, I get...
And absolutely, addiction is going to break down trust. It is going to damage integrity. There is no doubt about it. But repair is not going to start with the marriage. It can't. It can't start with the marriage. The repair has to start with the person with the issue. Because until that person lets that little demon and devil out, you can dance all the circles you want around the marriage campfire. You can do all the family counseling you want. It ain't gonna do crap. Until the person with the issue can release whatever that demon is that's causing it, you can sit in all the family counseling meetings you want every Tuesday and Thursday night from 7 to 8 p.m. and it's not going to do crap. Trust me on this.
Completely angry. She gets completely shamed and guilty, regretful, doesn't do it for a while, but then goes back to hiding and deceiving and lying to me about these purchases.
Of course she's going to go back to that, because what the problem is was never solved. And this is something that spouses or people in relationships, even though I was not married, I can definitively tell you this. If you are the person that's watching your spouse with the shopping addiction, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. You getting upset is normal. Natural reaction. It's not your fault. And the hard thing that I think people sometimes have is there's also a sense of guilt. I think my parents, for a while, once my parents found out the extent, my parents eventually found out, okay? But it wasn't till a few years later. But they eventually found out. You know, I remember my dad literally saying to me, he goes, Carrie, what can we do? What can we do? And I'll never forget my mom, stepmom, okay, my mom. I call her my mom because I love her so much. She's as equal to me as a mom. She is my mom. I was very lucky. I had two mommies. I remember my mom looked at him and said, there's nothing we can do. Basically, you have to let them go through it. Think of someone who's going through drug recovery. Okay, now I have never experienced it personally, but and I hate to say it from what I've seen in documentaries, but that's what I'm going with. Can you do all that sweating for them? Can you do all those night terrors for them? Can you do all that shaking and shivering for them? No, you cannot. Why? Because they're the only ones who can go through it. Counseling isn't going to solve that.
I don't know. Do you think, Mr. Counselor, maybe she has a spending addiction? And let the marriage counselor ferret it out.
I'm sorry. Marriage counselors, no. My opinion. She has... a marriage counselor can't do anything. A marriage counselor can't fix this. I mean, I respect Dave, but he don't know crap about this. A marriage counselor can't fix this. I know this. So it's like watching somebody and they're taking you in circles and you're going, and I'm screaming in my head, I'm going, that's not going to fix it. This is not where a marriage counselor belongs. This is where a psychiatrist belongs. This is where someone who specializes in OCD belongs. Not a marriage counselor because they want to figure out why you don't put your toothpaste on the right side of the sink, or why you need 3 toothbrushes, or why you don't put the toilet lid down. Do you see? So much I'd like to tell my audience, but I can't.
And depending on what type of counselor you got a hold of and so forth, they may be qualified to actually work with her.
They're not. If it does not have psychiatry behind their name, they're not. They're not. And you will never convince me they are, and I will die on that cross. As one of my best friends would say, I will die on that cross. No. Marriage counselors are for certain categories. They are not for OCD, shopping addiction that takes you to hell and back where you almost lose your freedom.
On that, but I would open the door through marriage counseling.
No, I would not open the door through marriage counseling. Later, you can deal with marriage counseling. She can't fix, the wife cannot repair her marriage until she repairs herself first. You can do all the marriage chants and dances you want. You don't even have to marry. I was in a relationship. I wasn't married, but I was in a relationship. You can do all the relationship dance and chants you want. It's not gonna fix it. Oh, why did I do this video?
Okay.
And let somebody that's a pro look at the symptoms in detail, not some goober on the...
A pro psychiatrist that specializes in OCD, that specializes in personality disorder, that specializes in that very specific condition of shopping addiction. Specialists. That's what they do for a living. That's what you want. That's what he needs to be telling her. And give her the space to go through it. Step out of the picture for a while. Understand it's not you as the spouse or you as the boyfriend.
Radio like me. All right, because I'm no more a counselor than Fly the Moon, man. I'm just a guy. Okay, I mean I do.
At least he admits it.
I do counsel people. I do give them, direction on things, but I'm not trained in that area. I have had the benefit as a financial coach or financial counselor of seeing a lot of addiction over the years, and I will tell you, there's actually a 12-step program called Debtors Anonymous, and a lot of the people that are in that 12-step program are struggling with actual spending addictions.
I was familiar with Debtors Anonymous, and I'm going to tell you, just like an alcoholic, I went to a meeting. This is, like I said, I was in my mid-20s. I went to a meeting and attended 2 sessions and never went back. Why did I never go back? Well, if the answer were easy, I'd be able to tell you, wouldn't I? I think probably much like alcoholics, it's not that you definitely don't judge the people there. That I can tell you. Has nothing to do with the people that were there. It has everything to do with the fact that your self-esteem gets so low, you're convinced nobody can help you. Least of all, you helping yourself. So I did go to a couple of the meetings, but I couldn't ever sync with it. Couldn't do it. Tried. I just couldn't do it.
They're very real. It is a real spending addiction. But I've also talked to a lot of people that they didn't have a spending addiction. They just had simple self-control problems, and there's a difference to that. Self-control
to me is less psychology related. It's more of I just really want this and I just want to buy it. OCD spending addiction, to me, if I had to base it, is based on trauma. It's based on something that has happened that has not ever been explained or brought out or discussed. I will tell you one thing. I was born in Saigon, Vietnam. And one thing I'm sure probably didn't help any, the very first human touch that I ever remember. Okay, I was born in Saigon, Vietnam during the war, 1967. I'm 56 years old. I should put away my cell phone. You can tell I'm getting nervous because I'm starting to play with stuff. And the very first human touch I ever remember was getting my forehead bashed against a shower wall. That is the very first human touch, was having my 3-year-old forehead bashed against a shower wall till I bled profusely all over the place. I was in an orphanage. That is the very first human touch I remember. And just screaming my eyes out. I remember them patching me up and sending me back into the orphanage, where I was pretty much beaten every night. That is what I'm talking about, and why you need a psychiatrist, not a family counselor.
It's a maturity thing. It's a selfishness thing. It's a control thing, and all those.
He's talking about the people that just, they just don't want to have to say no to their budget.
Those kinds of things, and those are things fall under the heading of growing up, emotionally and spiritually, and a good marriage counselor.
This is why, I'm sorry to cut it like that. This is why I said in my other video about a wife's spending addiction. If I can remember my thought. I can't remember my thought. It escaped me. I guess I'll move on. If I remember it, I'll tell you.
Can lead her and you through either one of these tracks, depending on what is determined, whether this is actually an addiction. But an addiction is way over on the end of the spectrum, and it's going to take pretty extreme types of input, not just...
And here's something else that I would tell the husband to be aware of. When she does come around, when she does, if she does, gain her composure and she finds herself, the world that she has built may not be the world that she wishes to keep. In other words, part of her recovery may include that certain people aren't in her life anymore. And that can include the spouse. Something to consider.
A little bit of change of information. In other words, Financial Peace University won't help you if you've got an addiction.
Exactly. And neither will a family counselor.
It's a waste of time. Because all it's going to do is aggravate you and make her feel bad. But if she's just immature...
And the worse she feels because she thinks that you are, judging her, the worse the addiction gets. Everything just basically becomes a trigger. That's really what it is. And this is something that, I would tell this husband, and this is why you have to give that person space. I'm very, very grateful that I had a non-judgmental family. Very, very grateful. And I'm very, very grateful that I was not married at the time. Because I think it would have probably, even though I'm divorced for different reasons, in my 40s. But as far as, had I been married in my 20s, I think it would have ended my relationship. I think it would have ended my marriage. And again, it's not the fault of the spouse. It's not. But sometimes when somebody gets onto the other side of recovery, they look at their life in a totally different way. And the hard part is that their spouse might not be a part of it anymore for whatever reason. There could be a myriad of reasons.
And just doesn't have good self-control and needs a system that the two of you work together on, then Financial Peace University will work for the two of you.
And I totally agree with him on that. If she's healthy, of sound mind, this is just some, hey, could you stop spending, $500 every month on, handbags or shoes or whatever. Okay, that's fine. But you're not dealing with any sort of trauma. You're not dealing with any sort of, hidden, backstory that nobody knows about. How many people marry somebody that has a history of trauma, but the person that they marry doesn't know about it? Has a history of trauma, but the person that they marry doesn't know about it. And when that trauma comes out, it can alter. No, not it can. It will alter the relationship. And the relationship can be altered in such a way that the marriage can no longer sustain itself. either because the person who's been through the traumatic event has seen the light and looked and gone, you really are not the right person for me. You know, I know I'm of sane mind and body, realize you're not the right one for me. Or the person who is the normal, the psychologically healthy person, so to speak, looks at it and goes, this is too much. This is more than I can deal with. You know, I don't have it to take my spouse through such a journey. Okay?
And I'll give you that. Have you been through the class?
We're in week 7 right now.
Oh.
Yes, very...
And I can tell you, she's not making any progress. And even if he thinks there's progress being made, there isn't. It's all surface. And it's all surface because the problem she has is way below the surface. This is something people have to be careful about, you know. Just like with, you know, other addictions, there can be that, what I call it the fake recovery time. You look like you're recovering, but you're not, you know. You just look like you are. You're playing the role just better this week than you did last week, or better, you know, than you did 2 weeks ago. And you're just so happy sometimes, you know, when you can drive by a store and you're like stinking congratulating yourself because you drove by a damn store and you didn't stop to shop. Just like an alcoholic is proud that they made it all the way home and they didn't stop at the bar. That sort of thing. You find yourself, you congratulate yourself over things that are just like, really? I need to congratulate you because you drove by the mall and you didn't stop? Yeah, you do. I have to congratulate myself. Right?
I'm very appreciative of the class, and we're trying to get on the same page.
Has she entered into the whole budget process with you?
Yes, she's in the process, and that's...
She's not going to be able to do anything with the budget. You see, you can go through the steps, okay? I can sit down with you and do a budget. I can determine where we're going to live. I can do all of this surface stuff. I can even try to make you feel better because I'm doing all of it. The problem is I still feel like crap. My problem isn't solved. That's what it's about. You can do all the actions, you know. You can get up every day and go to work. That's why I say, you know, I was a high functioning shopping addict. Very high functioning.
That's where it kind of manifested itself as more than just, to me at least, as improper spending, because she would agree to the budget and then later on
she'll blow over the budget because her addiction kicked in, and then it breaks the trust between the marriage.
So during this 7 weeks, she's agreed to a budget and then goes out and spends otherwise. And
here's the reality of it, folks. What she's going to have to walk through to get herself better is going to take years. This is no 7-week budget. This is going to take her years. Years. When I'm talking years, I'm talking, think of 5, 8, 10, and then 20 years later, she's going to be congratulating herself because she finally hit the 20-year mark of being clean, so to speak. This is not something that a 7, 8, 10-week budget can do. Yeah, I can fake it and give you a 7, 8, 10-week budget. Sure, does it make you feel better? Does it make you think I'm more covered? You know, can I fool you and do that? Oh, sure, I can stick to a budget, sure. This is going to take years. And this is why I think oftentimes it ruins relationships, because this is a years-long process. It's not something you can just ring up, stick on a calendar date. If you want to estimate mine, I'd say about 15 years. 15 years.
Yes.
And doesn't think that's wrong?
When confronted, she does.
Of course we know it's wrong. We know it's wrong. That's kind of a dumb question. No disrespect. Of course we know it's wrong. We know it's wrong. Of course. I compromise so many morals and values, it's ridiculous. I'm surprised if God even has a seat for me in heaven some days.
but then it's like, okay, so how do we fix this? Stop.
Yeah.
How do we stay on?
People don't understand when you are dealing with somebody in that addiction situation. Okay, we're talking about shopping. There is no we in repair. There isn't a we. There is no we. There can't be a we until the I, the me, is healed. It's impossible. Today, sure, I'm good today. And I work at it every day to be like this. Every day. It never stops. Ever. And you have to catch yourself. And you have to surround yourself with people, not who will catch you because they can't, but with people who won't judge you because of your history. And I have some very, very, very dear friends, probably 3 I can really think of, that truly know my history. But it is without judgment. So it allows me to catch myself. Nobody can catch me for me. Even if I fall, nobody can catch me. So I have to make sure that I catch myself. There is no we in this. None. Not in this. There is a we in the relationship end if you can get the person to get into the frame of mind and to stay there. And not everybody makes it. Not everybody does.
Stay on track.
Yeah. Okay.
And,
yeah, I'm going to go back to my original suggestion. Then you guys need to see a pro.
What I say. I know the story before the book has been opened. I can tell you the story based on the title. I'd almost say it was worth bragging over. This crap ain't nothing to brag over. I wouldn't wish this on an enemy. The shoes that I've walked in, the steps that I've taken, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, like them or not.
Yeah. All right.
Are you in a good church?
Okay, I know Dave Ramsey gets into his church stuff and all of that, okay? But, you know, if it helps hold the relationship together while you're going through it, I think a solid church is great, okay? I was baptized in the Methodist church, but whatever denomination, whatever style of church you like, but still keep in mind that the person with the disorder has to go through it themselves. Nobody can solve this. But a church can be used as kind of that emotional rock for both parties, but it's not a substitute for the steps that will be required to go through to get through recovery.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Ask your pastor for a recommendation of a good Christian marriage counselor.
Denomination
and that's somebody
does
that's
not matter.
licensed, that's been trained, okay?
That's fine if you want to talk about, you know, who left the toilet seat up. Not for obsessive compulsive disorder with extreme mental health issues. No. This is the church is not qualified. Church is not qualified.
Yep.
They can look at you guys and go, okay, this has got all of these symptoms, and these are the breakdowns.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop this. I think this is getting a little too churchy for me, and I kind of know how Dave ends this, so I'm going to go ahead and get ready to stop this. All right. So here's just my thought, and then it's time to call it a night. People need to understand, like if I could sit down and have a conversation with this husband that called in. First off, he is a 1 in a million because of the fact that he did call in. But I think people need to get a real sense, people need to be given a real sense of reality and truth. Part of helping someone heal may be the realization that the relationship has to end for that person to heal. That is not the fault of anyone. It's the luck of the draw, unfortunately, of perhaps who you married. Okay? I remember my psychiatrist telling me once when I was in my 20s. I remember she actually said to me, she said, I'm surprised you've made it this far. As in, I'm surprised you're still alive. That's the level of depth that the person must be trained in. And sometimes I think that the party who doesn't have the disorder, like my dad, trying to say, well, Carrie, let's just lay this out and kind of solve it. But then my mom, stepping in and saying, there's nothing we can do. And to some extent, you have to be prepared to watch, sometimes helplessly, as they go through this. And because this does involve money and it involves the budget of a couple, you as the person that does not have the addiction may have one of the toughest decisions in your life to make. And that is, do you stay by the side of somebody that could potentially financially drain you? I'm being cold honest here. Do you potentially stay by the side of someone who might financially drain you? Or is there some point where you have to move on with your life? I could tell you that today there is no way I could be married to a gambleaholic. I've been to the depths of hell and back, and so many levels. I could not be married to a gambleaholic. Partly because, or any sort of addiction, but when you're talking financial addictions, the addictions, and tell me any addiction that really doesn't drain finances, because if it's not going to drain finances with addiction directly, like, this husband and his wife has a shopping addiction, if it doesn't drain the finances like that, it's going to drain it in all the medical treatments that are going to be needed. All right, that's enough for tonight. I'm Carrie. This is Student Loan Chit Chat. I do hope you will consider subscribing, and have a great night. Bye.